So today we're going to be talking about the federal hours of service regulations and the effect that that has on truck drivers and their ability to make a living. So the first thing we're going to do is go over what those regulations are. So the first thing is the 11-hour driving limit, which states that a driver may drive a maximum of 11 hours after 10 consecutive hours off duty. So they have to be off duty for 10 hours, and then after that they can only drive for a maximum of 11 hours. And then there's the 14-hour limit, which also states that they may not drive beyond the 14th consecutive hour after coming on duty, following, again, 10 consecutive hours off duty. So off-duty time does not extend the 14-hour period. So they have to be off for 10 consecutive hours, and then after the 14th hour they've been off duty, whether driving or not, they cannot drive anymore. And then there's the 30-minute driving break regulation, which states that drivers must take a 30-minute break when they have driven for a period of 8 cumulative hours without at least a 30-minute interruption. This break can be satisfied by a number of different things. It can be on duty but not driving, or it can be off duty, or in the sleeper berth, or a combination of those. It just has to be a 30-minute break from driving period after 8 hours of driving. And then there's the 60 or 70-hour limit. So that means a driver cannot drive after 60 to 70 hours on duty in 7 to 8 consecutive days. They can start their 7 to 8 consecutive day period after taking 34 or more consecutive hours off duty. So basically, they have to be off for 34 hours before they start their next period of 7 to 8 days, in which they can only drive up to 60 to 70 hours. And then there's the adverse driving conditions situation, where drivers are allowed to extend the 11-hour maximum driving limit and 14-hour driving window by up to 2 hours when adverse driving conditions are encountered. So if there is weather or severe traffic or situations where conditions are out of the normal, they can increase up to 2 hours on their maximum allowed time depending on the situation. And so those are the main parts of the hours of service regulations. And now we're going to kind of discuss the impacts that that has on truck drivers and their ability to make a living. So first off, let's talk about some of the positive things. Some of the positives of these rules are that it's based on reducing driver fatigue and lowering the risk of accidents. If a driver is driving for hours and hours and hours on end without a lot of sleep, without a lot of breaks, they're eventually going to get tired and going to get worn out. And that is going to increase the likelihood of them getting in an accident, falling asleep while driving, hitting another car, anything like that. And so it definitely improves the safety of the driving conditions for truck drivers. It also helps just with a work-life balance. It could be easy for truck drivers to just work constantly if they were allowed to. But the positive thing about these regulations is that whether they like it or not, they're going to be forced into a work-life balance where they're not just working all the time. And so that is something that they can appreciate about these regulations. And then last, there are some health benefits. Making sure that they have the opportunity to sleep is definitely going to keep them healthier. As I discussed in previous videos, their lifestyles don't exactly make it easy for them to live a healthy lifestyle, especially when they're on the go all the time. With their diets, it's hard to eat fresh meals. It's hard to get a consistent sleeping pattern. And so these regulations at least contribute somewhat to their ability to maintain a bit of a healthy sleeping pattern, which contributes to their overall well-being and health. So those are some good things about these regulations, but we're also going to talk about some of the negative impacts. It definitely does reduce their earning potential. So when they can't drive all the time, they're not going to get paid as they would if they were driving all the time. So it definitely puts restrictions on their ability to make an income, especially because they are paid by the mile. And so depending on the situation, if they only can drive for a certain amount of time, but they can only make it so many miles within that time based on certain conditions, then they're going to be excluded from being able to make more money. Another thing is just the pressure to maximize their hours because they only have a certain number of hours they can drive. There might be some pressure or some stress to make sure that they get to use up all those hours, which could put pressure on them. Another thing is that there are delays sometimes, and the hours of service rules don't account for time lost at loading docks. And so the time that they're sitting at a loading dock while they're on duty and they're not actually driving, those aren't miles that they're getting paid for, but then they still get timed out when their time's done. So that definitely is an issue. And then again, unpredictable traffic and road conditions, it does have a provision that they can increase it up to 2 hours, but I was just in Lone Oak the other day at my parents' house, and there was a wreck where, and I may have discussed this in a previous video, where traffic was sitting still for almost 5 hours, I think, and there was tons of semi trucks sitting on the road just unable to move. And so even the 2-hour provision there doesn't totally account for that lost time. And so these are some of the pros and cons, positive, negative effects that the federal hours of service regulations have on truck drivers.